the ENPOR thematic seminar on energy advice. We are recording this session, so in case you don't want to appear in the recording, just turn off your camera, but mostly it's already turned off. My name is Eva Schuber. I'm from Climate Alliance, one of the partners in the ENPOR project, focusing on policy improvements for mitigating energy poverty in the private rented sector. Most of you probably already know ENPOR. It's a Horizon 2020 project lasting 3.5 years now, engaging various partners in the field. Some of the policy measures we worked on are targeting advisory measures for energy poor households. And this is a service that has proven to be invaluable in the recent energy crisis. But today we offer you a learning experience and an exchange possibility about Austrian and Dutch energy advisory measures for energy poor households. You will hear about various methods implemented, the challenges they face, but also the lessons learned. And we are eager to hear your experiences, your advice, and your opinion. So for this, you will have the chance to ask questions after each presentation and via the chat. And we will deep dive into the details in the discussion part after the presentations. You can use the chat function for your questions. My dear colleague from the Austrian Energy Agency, Altan, will monitor the chat. And don't be shy to use this tool because we will try to make sure that we can address all your questions. The recording of this seminar will also be available on the ENPOR website, which is empor.eu, and the ENPOR YouTube channel. But before we start, let me ask you 2 questions. And you can use the raise hands function of the meeting. On the top interaction bar, you can see a hand. That's the raise hands function. And please use this function if your answer is yes to the following question. Are you involved in or know of energy advisory services in your country targeting energy poor households? And I'm raising my hand because I know of them. All right, I see 5. Right. So 5, which is not even half. Hmm. Okay, thank you. You can stop raising your hands. And the second question is, are you aware of such services, so energy advisory services, targeting private rental situation, which is different from social housing, for example, or privately owned housing? Three, which is half of the 6. Thank you very much. We will come back to this later on. But now it's my pleasure to introduce you Kerstin Schilcher, who works for the Austrian Energy Agency, and we'll talk about the agency's latest contribution to increase effectiveness of such advisory measures for energy poor households. Kerstin is a senior expert in consumer behavior at the agency, and she's a good networker. Her work focuses on user behavior, new media for consumers regarding sustainable lifestyles, and, of course, energy poverty. And she's involved in various projects, consumer related, such as ENPOR. So, Kerstin, several measures in Austria address energy poor households, but the Austrian Energy Agency found that reaching these households often bear big challenges when it comes to materials rich in text. And you worked on some materials. So can you tell us more about it?
Yes, it is my pleasure. Thank you very much, Eva, for your kind words. And hello from Vienna to the audience. My name is Kerstin Schilcher, and together with my colleague Altan Sahin, who is also in the audience, I'm responsible for the activities in Austria in regard to our ENPOR project. And today I will tell you a little bit what happened in Austria, also on the meta level, but also, of course, of what we have done, particularly in regard to the ENPOR projects. And here we focused on visual language for energy poor households. Um, well, while we were in the middle of preparing our activities for ENPOR, the Russian war of invasion in the Ukraine happened, and as we all know, that also led to a rapid price increase on the energy markets in 2022. And Austria was particularly hit hard by this. And obviously, that meant there was a noticeable increase on the burden of the population of Austria. And thus, the Austrian government implemented various measures to relieve those burdens, on the one hand, for the whole population, and also on the other hand, targeted to energy poverty, our vulnerable households, and energy poor households. The first measures, just to give you a little bit of an idea, is what happened on the governmental level is, for example, a governmental campaign was launched, which was called Mission 11, where the whole population together should save 11% of energy. That was with the background of, first of all, raising awareness in regard to the need, and also help the population along with easy tips, basically. Various one of payments were introduced, temporal discontinuation and reductions of levies as well, and electricity cost subsidies were introduced, meaning financial support for electricity costs for households. So that was on the governmental level for all households, but there was also focus on energy poor households and specifically targeted measures. It was very apparent that there is a great need for that, and the Austrian Energy Agency, the team of ENPOR, and also my colleague Barbara, who will tell you a little bit later on social energy advice training. We all have been involved in a lot of those measures on the governmental level for the whole population, but also particularly on the energy poor household measures. One of the things which was really important was the increase of the so-called housing umbrella, where not just support for rent arrears were accepted, but now also for energy cost arrears. That was an important introduction. The clean heating for all was introduced, which is a subsidy to make it easier for energy poor households to switch from fossil fueled boilers to sustainable heating systems, 100% funded. Then new counseling formats, the social energy advice were introduced and developed. Barbara will tell you about this. And also appliance replacement and energy advice service, meaning that appliances can be exchanged free of charge after evaluation if they are, consuming a lot of energy, that they are old and inefficient, and then energy saving consultation had to take place on site. So various measures in place. And we also supported those measures with our visual language for energy poor households. Before we even started our ENPOR project, we reached out to the Umweltberatung. This is an energy advice service in Austria, in Vienna. They have also a long-standing experience already with vulnerable clients and vulnerable households. This is very unusual for an energy advice service, especially when we look at other federal provinces in Austria. And thus we reached out to them and asked, what do you need to better support your clients, to reach a bigger mass of your clients? And we started a so-called co-creation process with them, and we scanned all their materials that they use, and it was very quickly apparent that the existing fact sheets were full of information, but very technical and difficult to understand. This is also something which they realized already in the on-site advice sessions. And so we thought, okay, here we can really make a big change with the crisis and everything, that it then really hit the nerve. Obviously, that was due to the rising crisis, of course, and the realization on a stakeholder and governmental level that support is needed. What we also envisaged was that we wanted to introduce a pilot phase. So whatever we developed needed to be tested with the households, and we did that with 50 different households. So that was very important, and we also managed to implement that actually, because also this was also there was still a little bit of the pandemic as well, but yeah, so couple of hurdles, but we did manage to do that. Um, the reaching the hard to reach is something very important, and why we chose the energy advice service, the Umweltberatung, because they have that experience already. They have already required trust with the clients, and that is very important. Always, especially with that client. So what we have done, we decided to really convey information with graphic elements. We focused on three different fact sheets which have already been established, and on the left-hand side on the corner, you can see how they looked before and how we developed them through the co-creation process. We focused on three different topics: save electricity the easy way, save heating costs in the winter, very important, and cool through the summer. As I said, we had the co-creation process with the Energy Advice Service and also a graphic designer, which we involved very early on, and who was part of the team in developing and understanding our tips and our needs for the specific clients. As I mentioned already, the pilot phase was very important. We got a lot of feedback from the households, and we did a lot of rounds of working over the fact sheets again to make them more understandable and easy understandable. And this is the end product of it. The overall feedback from the vulnerable households was very positive. They gave us the feedback that it is very easy to understand. Obviously, the one tips which weren't that easy to understand, we changed them. And also something which was feedback is that before, when you have an energy advice within a household, usually it's always only one person you're talking to, because the other household members don't have time or they're not available. And it was always very difficult then for the people who got the advice to actually translate that to the other family member, household members. And with that particular fact sheets, they found that it is way easier to discuss it, to talk it over, and just to hand it over to them as well. So I think that was also something very important, which feedback we received on that. The acceptance of our fact sheets was really very positive, not just from the clients, but also on the governance level. And in that regard, we worked very closely with the Ministry of Climate Action, and also with Barbara with her climate protection initiative, Klimaaktiv. And we managed to secure additional funding to translate those fact sheets into 5 languages. You can see them here in English, Turkish, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Arabic, and Farsi. And of course, the original language version is in German. And that increased the accessibility hugely as well. Um, but we also secured funding for printing, because the energy advice services, they go really into the households and they use it and they leave it there. So more than 140,000 copies have already been ordered and distributed. And not only the advice services initiated from the Ministry for Climate Action, they use that, but also the Ministry of Social Affairs for the social housing umbrella for their support offers. They also use that material. By now, we for the new program on the electrical appliance exchange program. They also use that material. With that program, we reach way more and new clients. So that is also a very important cornerstone of it. And in the newly developed training services for the social energy advice trainings, it is also being used. And due to the great interest of the new fact sheets, there was also some feedback that water saving and hot water saving is also an important issue, which was raised. And we are currently, because ENPOR is still, running for a couple of months, we are currently developing a fact sheet on water saving, and we're also in negotiation for further translations of all the fact sheets into Ukrainian and Russian. That was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention. Look forward to any of the questions now or later in the discussion part.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kerstin. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you have any questions, dear audience, this is a good time to put your question in the chat. Eventually, raise your hand and unmute your microphone to speak. I'm giving a couple of more minutes. I see no questions up to now, no hands raised. Then I would move on to our next presenter, and I welcome Barbara Alexander Bittner. I see a first question. Are the tips mainly on behaviors or also about applying for funding and renovation? I think, Jean-Sébastien, you actually took my question from the end, but that's fantastic. Go ahead, Kerstin.
The actual content, the tip contents, they are on behavior change and really very small in financial where you have to pay a little bit, but very little, like a few euros to actually implement some of the tips, but it's all on behavior. The funding and renovation, yes, there is at the end of or the second page of the fact sheets, there's always an info box, for example, where you can get specific funding in relation to the content of the tips, or also where you can get energy advice. So yes.
Thank you very much. I already have the second question, but I will keep that for the end. And go back to Barbara Alexander Bittner,
Yes,
who's also
hello.
representing the Austrian Energy Agency as well. And she will explain us a new concept to complement traditional energy advice, the social energy advice. It's your
Yes.
turn.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome from my side, also from Vienna. My name is Barbara Alexander Bittner, and I'm a senior expert at the Austrian Energy Agency. And my main topic is training of professionals, and I would like you to introduce you to the training program Social Energy Advice, which was developed within the framework of Klimaaktiv. And first, tell you a little bit about Klimaaktiv and the Austrian Climate Protection Initiative. So I hope that my presentation works now. Yes, social energy advice. First, a little bit about Klimaaktiv and the framework within social energy advice was developed. Klimaaktiv is the Austrian Climate Protection Initiative. It was founded in 2004. So next year we will be 20 years old or young or whatever, and has since been working within a network of experts for climate protection in Austria. Our primary objective is to introduce and promote climate-friendly technologies and services And what we do is we focus on high standards of quality, and around those quality standards, we give advice to households, businesses, and communities. And we cooperate with a large network of partners in Austria. So within this partners, there's the provinces and businesses. We try to be hands-on and have a close contact to the communities also. And one part which we also cover is we provide education and training for professionals, which is also very important. In the training and professional education, we mostly work with partner organizations which deliver branded training as Klimaaktiv partners. So these organizations are mostly educational institutions. And since 2004, over 36,000 participants were part of one or the other Klimaaktiv training. And in 2022, we had 7,000 participants in the different training from photovoltaics to energy consulting to energy efficiency in production, mobility training, mobility cycling trainers. There's a broad range of training trainings. And we do that through the partnerships. And what we also do, and is a very important part of our work in the training of professionals, is we try to increase the visibility of the trainings and a specific education related to green skills. We try to increase the visibility of the specific skills of the professionals. So there's a brand which we call competence partner. So these are people with special skills in one or the other climate action, climate related topic. And what we also do, and what I would like you to introduce to you today, is we identify needs for further training, and we support new training formats, which we did in the past. And the social energy advice is one of these new training formats we support and try to develop. So for the social energy advice, what we did was based on two different topics. First, a quality standard for social energy advice, which we developed within the last 1.5 years. And the second topic we worked on was a training program for the social energy advisors. And this started in autumn and is still ongoing. Why did we do that? I'm an energy advisor myself, so I know the social energy, the energy advice services in Austria quite well. And the topic was that there is a very well established system of household energy advice in Austria, but it has still some blind spots when it comes to households with lower income. So the energy advice services are providing services on-site advice, online advice, and phone advice. But it is usually the advice is usually initiated by the households themselves, and it focuses mainly on the technical assessment of the building, recommendations on the building renovation and heating system exchange, on funding and investment advice, and not so much on behavior change. mostly when it comes to on-site advice, which is a little bit different from the phone advice. And the format is mostly, especially for the on-site advice, is mostly a one-off advice. So the energy advisor comes once and then leaves again and gives a written protocol to the household, which is very much text-based and sometimes a little bit complicated with technical information in it. The services is provided by a technical expert. This is also different from social energy advice, and the training of energy advisors focuses mainly on technical knowledge and skills. There's some training on the advisory services and the communication part, but the main focus is on technical knowledge. But when it comes to households at risk of poverty, the needs are very much different from the other advice, because the households are facing difficult living circumstances. They're struggling with language barriers. The energy bills are only one issue, often among many others, that problems of the households. The options for action are very much limited, so often not much option for investments, for example. And the understanding the energy bills and heating and electricity demand is crucial for the households in terms of dealing with bills, dealing with problems, dealing with the living situation. And the advisors need to be aware of those needs to react to the households and give advice which can be used by the households. So what we first did is we tried to look into this kind of advice. How should energy advice for households at risk of poverty look like? And what we did is we collected a lot of experience from projects in the past. We didn't. There was no need to invent from scratch, but there's a lot of experience, and we mainly collected experience and looked into the main factors which are important in this kind of advice. And we identified this advice at the intersection of energy consulting, so technical energy consulting, and social work. So this is kind of bringing two worlds together. And the information in the quality standard is on the format, duration, and the venue of the energy advice, appropriate methods, materials, and equipment, and the qualification of the advisors. So these are the three parts in the quality standard. And what we also did is we included the perspective of energy and social advisors in the development of this quality standard. And we also included the perspective of the affected households. So this was very important for us. Step 2 was the training program for social workers, which was also already in the quality standard. So the content of the training program was part of the quality standard already. And a little bit about this training program. The requirement of the participation is working as a social advisor, so mostly social workers are participating in these trainings. The training is carried out by energy advisors and social workers. So the trainers are from both sides, and we focus on simple recommendations for action and awareness raising and behavior change. And the reduction of energy consumption is really a secondary. It's not focusing on reducing energy consumption, but mainly on awareness raising in the households. And the technical content is mainly on heating, electricity, and energy bills. So not so much about the building and this very detailed information of building quality and so on. So we kind of focus on the on practical issues.
Barbara,
Yeah.
I think in the chat people are asking if you can minimize the box of your Besprechung.
Okay.
Because it's in front of the.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I didn't see it. Yeah, so the training consists of 4 modules. In the moment, we have a basic module focusing on heating and energy efficiency and bills. And the second, which is only focusing on energy bills. The first 2 basic module and the module on energy bills are online courses. The first one is 8 hours, so on 2 days, and the second one 6 hours, also on 2 days. And these modules were carried out already, and module 3 and 4 on electricity and heating will be attendance courses, and we will give that in autumn. We will start it in autumn, and this will be half day, so 4 hours for each one. And apart from this, apart from these 4 modules, we have networking once a month. So 1 to 2 hours of networking where the energy advisors can come together online and ask questions and talk about how they are doing with the work and what is important for them. And we also have self-study elements which are working very, very well within this group, because they have a there's really quite strong engagement from the participants. So I brought a few examples of these training programs to show you how we worked. The trainer who carried out this first program or this first module is a social energy advisor who works mainly with energy poor households, and he brought photos and examples from those households and explained very easy and very practical measures how to check and how to explain things to those people living in the household. So this is a picture about checking the windows and and giving advice about the quality of the windows and what the households can do. This is a picture of heat for the heating system. So how we worked on the heating system, explaining this to the social advisors and explaining how typical installations look like, what the advisors can tell to the people in the households. And this is also an example working with very easy pictures about how radiators in one room should be used or rather not used. This was kind of funny sometimes also. And this is the small part we did on the building quality to show how building quality is how different flats are different in energy consumption because of the because they're upstairs or downstairs and so on. What we also did, and Kerstin already showed you, we provided materials and equipment. So we provided electricity meters, room thermometers, and low threshold information leaflets. And I have on the sheet, I got 100,000 leaflets had already been ordered. In the meantime, it's already increased. So this works really good. And we also made this package together with the energy advisors. So we asked them, what would you need in the advice? And they told us. So this was not our own idea, but we discussed it also. As key enablers, I would see network building between the social and energy advisors, which was very important because energy advisors have their own experience, and the social advisors have their own experience with households. So the networking is very important, and the network building between social energy advisors and energy providers is also very important. We see that in Vienna, where this is working very well. One other key enabler is surely sufficient funding for the on-site consultancy. We were very lucky that when we developed the training, there was the funding of the social energy advice started, and there was enough funding for on-site advice. So this is of course, very important, and long-term reliability helps getting more participants in the training, of course, and is giving perspective to the people participating. The provision of materials and equipment for the advisors is also very important. We see that we keep in close contact to the advisors, also through the provision of materials and equipment, and through the networking. People get to know each other. They exchange gets easier. And this is really a very successful story, and over 200 participating in the training, and we have more to come. So there will be more trainers in autumn too. So we will start with the first module in autumn or spring next year again. So
That
this
sounds
is from
fantastic.
my side. Thank you very much, and I'm open to your questions.
Thank you, Barbara, very much. I think you can stop sharing.
Yeah, I have to find my okay.
Stop
Thank
sharing
you.
button. Yeah. And I see some questions in the chat and would ask your colleague, Altan, our wonderful chat moderator, you want to address one or two?
Yes, I think we can, because I think both of them can be answered maybe in a short time. So the first question will be about the module on energy bills, and if there are also aids for households about their energy bills also part of the training there, and also if households should or when they should change the supplier.
Yeah, we did that too. And there was the advice on energy bills is part of the on-site advice, and but there's no written advice because we found that it is easier to explain to the households how they do it and to help them change the energy supplier or contact the energy supplier. So the concept is more not giving written advice, but explain and kind of yeah, participate in the process, but as a participation in the process by the energy advice, by the social advisors. So we very much focused on the part on how the social advisors can actually contact the energy suppliers and help the households to change energy suppliers or talk with energy suppliers about bills and billing and how to achieve better yeah, better results in the billing and get that. Yes, this was the focus of the training.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. The second question is also very interesting, but I would put that after our next presentation. If you don't mind, Altan?
Yeah, sure. I think it's also suits the discussion very well.
Yeah, fantastic. But now we get on the train and take a ride to the Netherlands. And I warmly welcome Nanda Vrieling from the University of Applied Sciences Utrecht, who will explain us the Dutch Energybox, specializing on advising energy poor households. She's a project manager at the Center of Expertise for Smart Sustainable Cities, with a background on social sciences. And of course, she is mainly involved in projects related to the social dimension of energy and circular transitions. She will talk about the Energybox. Nanda, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Eva. And welcome to everybody, also from the Netherlands. All right. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so following the presentations that we already had, I'm going to take you along in the program that we studied for ENPOR in the Netherlands, namely the Energybox. So I'll quickly show you what the approach of the Energybox is and what we studied for the ENPOR project. And then I'll focus on advising energy poor households. Just like Barbara already mentioned when talking about this target group, there are certain challenges that come up, and so what we did is using the research to come up with interventions that Energybox could take to better serve those households. One of which is also a training of the energy coaches. Some conclusions at the end. So the Energybox approach, to put it very simple, is in 4 steps. So this project was set up in 2014, started in the municipality of Utrecht together with 2 social housing organizations. And basically the idea was, next to the renovations that were done in the buildings to improve the buildings by the social housing corporations, was to how to give advice to the tenants on what they can do to save energy in their house. So what they come up with is this approach where the tenants would get a letter, physical or digital email, with the offer of a free box with small appliances that they could use in their house to save energy. People could sign up, they would receive the box, and next to the box would be an advice from an energy coach who would explain them about the materials in the box, but also look at the house, the state of the house, and what somebody could do to save energy. And they would get a report on with all the advice and all the tips. So that was kind of the standard on how it started. But in the last years, the approach has been broadened. So not only to serve social housing organizations anymore, but also by municipalities to for advice for house owners and also private tenants. So either together with the homeowners or private renting organizations, private investors, or financed by the municipality. So right now, in this year, this Energybox project is active in 19 municipalities around the country. Over 46,000 residents have been reached so far. There are more than 120 energy coaches trained and active. So yeah, it would be good to mention that instead of how it works in Austria, I guess from what I understood, then in the Netherlands there is no national coordinated system for energy coaching or energy advising. So these are local projects. But this Energybox is already active in a lot of municipalities, but other municipalities around the country might have similar initiatives making use of energy coaches in some way. So yeah, on average, people save about 10% of their energy bill, obviously, because also mostly it's focused on the small things that you can do in your house, so you can change your behavior, and not on big renovations. And it's really positively graded by the participants. So what would be in the box? Like the picture already shows, there could be LED lights, there could be radiator foil, shower timers. Also depends on the type of houses that it's offered to, which appliances would be in the box. So this is depends on the situation on the municipality as well. And so what does the energy coach do? The energy coaches in this case are often long-term unemployed people who are being helped by the Energybox to get back to work. So they are paid energy coaches, and they receive a special training. Yeah, just like in the Austrian case, of course, the training is about the technical aspects, but because the Energybox specifically focuses not on the renovation part of the buildings, but on the small appliances that people can do in their house, how they can change behavior, it's already much less technical. And so often the unemployed people, they don't necessarily have a technical background. So the way they contact people, so usually the people get an invitation in the mail, but also nowadays also door-to-door visits are being done. Main focus is to get information from the resident about the state of the house, on measures that have already been taken, and to kind of find out, okay, where are the opportunities to save energy, and then to give advice on that, with the measures obviously there to help, but also looking at behavioral change, and everything is summarized in the advisory report and personalized. So like I said before, finances are mostly by the municipality, together with social housing corporations. And when it comes to private tenants, which focus of ENPOR, obviously, then private investors would finance themselves for their own houses or buildings. But as it also turns out, it's very hard to reach the smaller house owners, the landlords, to participate in this project. So usually then they are reached through the municipality who finances and, for example, puts on a campaign with Energybox in a certain neighborhood and then just send invitations to all the people in the neighborhood, including homeowners, including social tenants, including private tenants. So what we did in the ENPOR research was basically study, okay, how does the Energybox work right now, the approach, what is successful, what is less successful right now, and how can it be improved, especially focusing on reaching the energy poor people and the private tenants. So we did surveys amongst the participants, observations and interviews with energy coaches, React groups with multiple stakeholders, and also some specifically focusing on certain target groups within that energy poor, with people who have more risk at energy poverty. So, for example, people with a migrant background or students. Yeah, so what came out, and I already noticed in the presentations from Austria that some of things you will recognize. So some of the challenges when it comes to advising specifically energy poor households was the language part. So just like the flyers that were made in Austria. Also, Energybox has been translating communication means into different languages. But also one of the things is to try and diversify the pool of coaches, so that not only can you reach people in their own language, but also you can help them in the advice, people with different languages, which is, by the way, not easy. That's also shows. But it's definitely a goal. Trust would be another challenge, that the standard procedure was to send a letter on from the municipality, for example. But as it shows, the target groups who are at risk of energy poverty are also a lot of people with low trust in government, for example. So then this type of letter, would not appeal to them, or, might automatically end up in the trash bin. So there's much more focus now on making use of local networks, making use of community centers, for example, and reaching people through those networks. And instead of sending letters, going door to door, ringing the bell, telling about the project and the offer. So different ways to reach people. But also give, for example, instead of the one-on-one advice where the energy coach comes to your house, which might also, when it comes to trust, not something that everybody wants. Then also giving, for example, workshops at the community center, so targeting groups of people. And also, like Barbara mentioned already as well, the multiple problems. So also for that, the cooperation with local social organizations, social workers, is a very important step that Energybox is taking. And also here, and that also relates to the trust part, that one visit that just shows that this is not enough, and that multiple visits are included in the procedure for certain target groups, because because then you can tackle the multiple problems that might be behind the possibilities for people to change their behavior and to save energy. And that's also related to the long-term effects. So it shows in the results as well that one visit might not lead to the long-term effects. So it does, make people more aware, but in order to actually change behavior, more is needed. So also multiple visits help for that. And also, just like with the language, also that report that was a just a Word document, is also actually also inspired by the Austrian fact sheets. Energybox is now also changing their report into a more visual report, so that's something to give along to the people, that they can actually use and talk to the other people in their house, and maybe put somewhere on the wall, or so that they can be easily reminded. And finally, the training of the coaches, so making them more aware of, oh, I feel I'm in the dark now. My light is automatically switches off. The sensitivity of the coaches when it comes to the social dimension, and the needs of these target groups. So just like in Austria, we did training of coaches, a little less extensive. So I think we should scale up, when I looked at the experiences in Austria, but definitely because these coaches are already they already have their own background that they bring in, and they have their coaching was already less technically based. Looking at this increasing of the sensitivity, and also exchanging knowledge and experiences among the coaches was very important. So yeah, here's specifically on the training. Here's a picture of the training that we had last year. So this training basically focuses on conversation techniques, on the sensitive communication when it comes to energy poverty, and also on how this works with behavioral change, that only telling somebody how what they should do or how things work might not necessarily lead to actual behavioral change. So what are the factors that stimulate behavioral change? We did some role-playing games, and like I said, also this exchanging of experiences amongst the coaches, which they were not so used to doing. That turned out to be very important. And we made this kind of abbreviation that I translated in English. It came down to planet. That the main focus of the advisory talk would be that the residents would set their own goals on on what they can establish in their own home. That instead of just sending, giving advice, actually, most important is to listen. Listen to what's going on in that person's household. Focus on autonomy, so not telling them what to do, but okay, these are the suggestions. It's up. It's well, not up to you, but they can take action themselves. No judgment, empathize, and building this trust relation with the residents. So these are something that they can use to remember. Yeah, so to conclude, what we see with the Energybox project is that there's much more focus on reaching the energy poor households in the last year. So also it's an actual goal that Energybox formulated. They said, okay, we want to not only reach those that find us themselves, but we really want to target more the energy poor households who really need our help. It also showed that because they are working with long-term unemployed coaches, that is actually their advantage. So what we see in other cities or other projects where voluntary coaches are being used, that often they are more retired people, for example, who with a technical background, and with these long-term unemployed people, a lot of them have experiences in difficulties in their lives, poverty, these kind of things. So they are actually closer to the target group, and Energybox can make use of that. Yeah, to summarize, the research has led to multiple interventions on this diversity and the training of the coaches, on the communication means that are being used to reach the people, on making use of those local networks and working together with social organizations, and also to make the whole approach more low-key, invest in multiple visits, etc. And that, yeah, basically trust is key. So all interventions are focusing on that. Yeah, that would be what I wanted to share from our side.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Nanda. We have direct questions to you already in the chat. And I will start with an Anne's question. Not every household will need all the things that are part of the box. Do you have any experiences if those hand unneeded things to friends or family, or do the energy consultants only hands out the things that are needed by the specific household?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so previously, the box was standardized, and they would just give out the box, and no matter whether those appliances would be necessary or something. But in the last years, and also through the research, it was shown that okay, it's much more effective if you make also the content of the box much more how do you say it? Like make it special for that resident. And so what's happening right now is that often they first have the advisory talk, and then based on what comes out, what that residents would need, those appliances would be given. So that's
Okay.
yes, yeah. So then it's much more.
So you changed the approach, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We also have a question from Joanna from Portugal. You mentioned that the energy coaches are long-term unemployed and they receive support from the project. What kind of support?
Well, I think that I mentioned that they are long-term unemployed, and now they were long-term unemployed, and now they are employed by the Energybox. So these are people that through contact with the municipality are linked to the Energybox because they were having a hard time finding a job. That now the Energybox set up this system where they are being trained into becoming an energy coach and then being paid for that. And that is part of the business case basically of the Energybox, where the municipality pays for the boxes, but also pays for these energy coaches basically.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a similar model like the German Stromsparcheck energy saving advice. And we
Yeah.
also have a question to all speakers, and I think we're running out of time, so I would ask this from all our speakers. When the energy advice is provided to tenants in the private rented sector, does it include a support like mediation with the landlord when some obvious improvements are needed that depend on the landlord? So that would have been also my closing question, actually, Jean-Sébastien. Thank you for this. Is basically how to connect the the social energy advice and the Energybox to renovation advice, where the actual situation can be really made better of the energy poor households. Shall I repeat the question?
Well, I mean, just a quick answer from
Yeah.
Austria. I repeated, already wrote it in the chat. At the moment, this is unfortunately not the case in Austria, but surely something which we should pick up.
Yeah, and a word from me too. It was included in the quality standard for social energy advice, but it's not yet funded in Austria. So we had this as a recommendation in the quality standard, and the funding has to be
secured.
Yeah, it's a future topic, I would say.
Yeah, same in the Netherlands. This is actually a quite sensitive topic where also Energybox is a bit struggling with, because especially, for example, in the case of students, it's often the case that something definitely needs to be done on the house itself, and the Energybox focuses specifically on, okay, what can you do yourself, which is helpful to a certain extent. But then, so they say, okay, this is the renovation of the building is not our issue. This is not something that we have the knowledge to advise you in, and also, we don't want to kind of get into that part. But you're right that is definitely seen that there is some mediation necessary. But yeah, in case of Energybox, they kind of decide that they don't really want to burn their fingers on that. Also because when it comes to the private, so this is for the landlords. When it comes to the private investors, they are the ones paying for the Energybox to be distributed amongst their tenants. So then, yeah, so then there's also, getting into the mediation is a bit tricky. But obviously, when they get a response from the residents on certain things that are problematic in their buildings, they would give that back to the private investors. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah, that's actually a hot topic.
Yeah, it's
I
complicated.
guess it's where the most money is involved in lifting the situation. That's where it gets complicated, and definitely this would be something for our policy recommendations coming up at the end of the project, to connect the so-called soft support with with actual renovation support, and how this is possible. Wouldn't it be fantastic if ENPOR could provide all the answers? That would be very nice. We also have a final question, and with that, I will also close. So would you say that the minimum energy performance standards currently under discussion for the EPBD recast would help to go from energy advice to energy renovation? This is actually the topic for a next thematic seminar, but maybe if you can give your personal opinion on this.
Well, when it comes to Energybox, like I mentioned, so in this project we kind of separate the renovation and the advice on, okay, what should the owner do and what can you do. So no, but I do feel that this kind of standards, and in the Netherlands there's also being talked of for example stating that single glass windows would be how do they call it, like a sorry, I cannot think of the Dutch word, the English word, but so that this is a problem of the house, you know, so that you can actually say that you can sue your landlord, or if it's not if it's not the right standard. So I do think that this kind of lifting of the standard of what would be necessary as a minimum level of the housing would be very helpful, because not all landlords and not all house owners will by themselves take the necessary measures. So some support for tenants to yeah, by law is I think necessary. Yes.
I don't know if Kerstin or Barbara can give their opinion if they.
What I can tell about that is that we learn a lot from the social energy advisors about the situation in the households. So I think this is a very important part when it comes to developing new measures on the public level. So we learn what we learned, for example, was that there's a lot of public buildings from the provinces or small communities in which energy poor households live, and the standard is not good. So it's often not only the private sector, but public buildings, buildings owned by communities. And this could be an interesting focus, and this is something we didn't know to this extent, or something you can learn from the social energy advisors, because they are on site and they get to know the situation better. And this is also part of the documentation and the protocol. The social energy advisors of some programs in Austria have to fill out, and this is a part of learning for future measures. And I think this also a very important part of this whole process and this instrument, learning about energy poverty and the actual situation.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara. Kerstin, you probably just agree.
Yes, I agree. I mean, and I just think it's not either or. It has to go hand in hand. Just to add that.
And that is our perfect closing words. Thank you, Kerstin, for that. We are very looking forward to what is going to happen with the EPBD this autumn. We know that the negotiations or the trilogue is still ongoing. MEPs are definitely one of the central debates. And we'll see how the future evolves here. So thank you very much for participating. The recording will be online, as I said in the beginning, but for those who joined later, on enpor.eu. And please follow us on social media so that you can learn about the next thematic seminar. Thank you for being here, and thank you for our presenters. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.